o'clock, so you ready for us? Good. Okay, welcome everyone. This is the Conservation Commission meeting of Goffstown. This is Wednesday, June 23rd, 2010. And we'll go around the room and state names for the record.
Nick Camposano, Selectman Rep.
Kim Ricard.
Kimberly Peace, Chair.
David Neiman.
Evelyn Miller.
Jean Walker.
Patty Gale, staff.
Okay, excellent. Everyone probably has the agenda, but I actually told Jason that he could jump to the front tonight because Jason Sachs has been our wonderfully hard-working representative on the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. Lots of things, and he's been helping us out with the whatever we call that, Piscataquag River Matrix. So I said that we'd push that to the front so that Jason and David can discuss it with all of us. So you guys can just have to hold on for a minute. So Jason, I don't know if you want to start, Jason, or if you want to start, David, or how you guys want to do this.
Go ahead. We haven't had any discussions. So.
Okay. Sure, you're welcome to have a seat.
Jason Sachs. I'm not quite sure how this process started, but Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission about I guess six months ago started an update to their Piscataquag River something plan. We had to do with the well, this is a separate plan. They had an existing plan that they updated, and along with that, they've started a Piscataquag Watershed Land Conservation Plan, which is their attempt at trying to come up with some quantitative ways of saying these areas are more appropriate for conservation, perhaps, than others by looking at, in particular, the State Wildlife Action Plan. And they've gotten some input from the towns, have revised that, have distributed maps to the towns. I'm not sure if exactly what form you have it in, but they have a meeting tomorrow to take final comment for the plan, and I'll be attending and would be happy to forward on comments from the commission, or at least try to represent the commission tomorrow in that meeting. I'm not quite sure what other kind of background you want. Basically, they've come up with a couple of co-occurrence models where they have different data sources for the entire watershed, which includes most of Goffstown, New Boston, Francistown, Ware, Deering, and bits of other towns in the region. And they've taken things like the aquifer transmissivity and Wildlife Action Plan had rankings for the area, unfragmented forest blocks, and assigned some value to them, and then crunched the numbers in their computer and come up with some maps that have different colors and things on them to state the different scores that come out of this. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, David.
We did rank it at one point.
Is fine, but yeah, we were asked to comment and give feedback on the information that was sent regarding Goffstown and how we feel the plan represents Goffstown. So I took the action at the last meeting to read it thoroughly and review. The entire plan is on this CD, by the way.
Okay.
The text of the entire thing.
Okay.
In addition to just the map. So really there's two parts to this. There's the plan itself, and the plan itself, it discusses, these are the things that are important. These are what we should look at. These should be key goals that, should be addressed to try to deal with things like water quality and stream flow, stream bank stabilization, shoreline protection, recreational opportunities, and preserving natural, scenic, and cultural resources. All that part of the plan, in my opinion, was fine. I mean, what they were talking about doing made perfect sense, and that part was great. The second part of this plan is then they actually go out to generate, these maps using the different layers. And you've got many, many different inputs here. So some of these things, are, topography. The topography is right. The water, the wetlands, the streams, all that, that's just fine. But some of these layers are very incomplete. And in particular, the Wildlife Action Plan, which Jason mentioned, plays a very big part in this plan. If you actually go back and look at, remember they had the meeting saying let's have a vote on which things should be weighted more heavily. And the end result is they're putting a very high weight on the state's wildlife action plan. The state's wildlife action plan is online. You can, look for it in Google, look it up. It's a big, huge document with many, many different sections. And let me just say at the outset, the state wildlife action plan is a wonderful thing. It's a huge and a noble effort to try to essentially map the whole state and rank it. But you have to understand it's in very, very incomplete work. This is the beginning, really, for the state wildlife action plan. They've taken, areas that were studied, a lot of them were further north or west or other regions. They've looked at that ground data, they've looked at other map data, they've tried to correlate it and, put it into matrices and see if they could make predictive models to fill in all the other blanks everywhere else. And then the plan gets augmented by real ground samples, real actual observations and data sets. So there's a lot of blanks that have to be filled in. If you actually read the plan, that comes up over and over and over that, this is the beginning. This is not it. And what they're doing, this data set in many areas would work very well. There's some areas that have been intensively studied, and if you're looking at one region versus another within that area, you may get very good results. But much of the state has not been studied, and Goffstown is one of those areas. And therein lies the problem. We are being ranked and compared with other areas, not only within the watershed, but around the state, and yet it hasn't been studied. Nobody knows what's here. And so it comes out ranking low. And Jason, I know, has pointed this out a number of times that, there were some problems with the layers they were using. For example, one of the things they look at is unfragmented blocks. Ecologically, there's a lot more integrity to large areas than there is to small areas, and so they divide it up into, say, unfragmented blocks that are at least 500 acres, or at least 1,000 acres, or whatever. However, the way that that's calculated sometimes isn't really quite accurate and somewhat simplistic. In Goffstown, we get hurt because we have a number of Class 6 roads, which come up in our GIS data as a road. Other towns, they're isolated out. They don't necessarily show the Class 6 roads that way. So a large area that happens to have a Class 6 road gets fragmented in that analysis, and it makes it appear smaller. The best example of that, there's actually a couple examples in town I could point to. The best example is the whole area that includes the county land, the Roberts Farm, that whole area. When you actually looked at the unfragmented area in GIS and you put it all together, you get like in excess of 900 acres that are unfragmented. Doesn't show up in their map for the 500.
They actually did fix that. I don't know if you have the most recent version.
Not in what they sent to us.
Oh, then they didn't send you the most recent version,
This
which
is what
is
they
sort
sent
of.
to us to review.
Okay.
Okay.
That's unfortunate. Well, they did fix that in their latest version. I'm not sure why that didn't propagate out to the commission for review. But I think you're right, that sort of general thing happened. One of the things I noticed was that they fixed the Roberts Farm area for the number of acres, but they show that the Roberts Road is extending quite a bit up into the property as a town road, which is not really the case, and I know that, I'm not sure.
Officially, it's a town road. It's really the driveway to the farmhouse.
Yeah, but if you look on our tax maps, for instance, you can see the,
It's not very long, but anyway.
yeah, anyway,
We'll deal with that we'll see what
That's a
they've done to
detail.
revise it. But there's a lot of other details too. So for example, actually not so much these maps, but if you back up a layer to the WAF layers that this is based on, and you need to go to the state WAF plan website to look at that. And like the tier 1, the highest priority ranked habitat areas, it's fascinating because what you'll see is some really strange artifacts. You'll see perfectly circular areas where somebody has calculated a radius from something. Well, unless there was a meteorite strike or something, I'm not quite sure what that feature would be. You'll see areas like the Hopkinton Everett Reservoir area is ranked really high. Why? Because it's been studied. You have to have environmental impact statements done for the flooding of the reservoirs. The tracking station in New Boston ranks very high. And it is a good area. But why? Because it's been studied. The Hackett Hill area ranks very high because the Nature Conservancy studied there when they did their preserve. And the areas in between just kind of fall off. So I just took as an example, and this is for the state's wildlife action plan, that, you know, you have the high rankings coming off of that Everett area that are extending over. You've got the area from Kimball Pond and all those preserves that was studied, and that carries over, and they pick up Perry Brook, but then they leave out this big central area in Goffstown, where among other things, we have the whole complex of drumlins and wetlands, which is a really diverse landscape. I mean, the wildlife is really abundant in that area, and for that reason. I mean, you've got everything there. You've got upland forests, you've got swamps, you've got vernal pools, and then swamps that the adults live in, vernal pools, debris, and it just very abundant area. Also within that area, there's a black gum red maple basin swamp, which according to the Wildlife Action Plan is considered an exemplary habitat, a rare habitat. Also within that area are the 3 Atlantic white cedar swamps in Goffstown, which according to the state is one of the rarest communities in New Hampshire, with fewer than 500 acres of Atlantic white cedar swamp in the entire state. 500 acres, the entire state. We have
We've got
3
like
of
10,
them.
we got like 10 acres roughly in Goffstown.
Yeah, so it's significant. I mean, whippoorwills. Whippoorwills are a study of great interest, whippoorwill surveys that have been done. And again, this region is one of the places in town where they're, come over to my place, I live in that area, so like, you can't even hardly hear yourself think at night because they land on the porch rail, and yeah, it's pretty cool, but whippoorwills are very abundant in there, and so on. I can keep going. That area doesn't fall into the plan as quality habitat. It's just simply because nobody has studied it. It's not that the Wildlife Action Plan is bad. It's not that it's, you know, there's anything wrong with the intent. It's just that it's incomplete. And that's fine. I mean, that should be presented as such so that people can understand it and realize that we need to fill in those blanks. But I feel what they're doing in this plan is then they're taking this incomplete data, this and other pieces. They also use an Audubon connectivity wildlife corridor study as part of that input. Care to guess what that's based on? The Wildlife Action Plan, same data set. That's what it extends from. You can't take data that is incomplete and then generate these maps of the town and say, well, these are the areas where you can focus on because we've identified these are the high priority areas. It's not a reasonable comparison because you haven't really compared all these areas to each other. So I think the plan is fundamentally flawed. That part of the plan, putting forth here's the recommendations to each of you towns where you should focus. I think it's just plain completely wrong to do that. But I think the plan itself is a great thing and should go forward, and I hope they take that to heart and work on trying to fill in these data sets before they try to make predictions or recommendations.
Well,
So that's the gist of my review of it.
is that something that a memo should come from the Conservation Commission, or?
Well,
is
David
it-
drafted something.
Oh, okay.
It's in your notes.
All right.
David drafted something to, maybe Jason insisted, so that, and I know Jason is going to attend the meeting tomorrow night. I don't know if David planned on attending,
I'm
but.
gonna try to make it.
Okay, so we formulated a response to them. So, and to their credit, we informed them after the last meeting that we had no time to review this and discuss it. And they did extend the deadline so that all the conservation commissions in the region could comment on it, which was appreciated. So at least there will be some discussion of this. And my concern was always that when we started ranking this, I remember Karen brought up a different way of thinking than I had thought about, like, instead of looking at the region, looking like, well, how do we protect our town? How do we make our regions look high? And my concern is that if every town did that, it's going to be all, like, if they're going to score theirs differently than ours. Because if we felt that way, we would have scored wildlife really low. But we all understood that the plan, it's kind of high and wildlife's valued even though it's flawed. And so it's just, I don't know, it's an interesting, I understand what they're trying to do to gather everyone's input. I'm not sure the numbers and the ranking system actually was all that helpful, but I don't know.
Well,
They didn't
yeah,
ask me,
essentially
so.
they're going to every town and having people from every town vote on these are the categories I feel are important. And I guess that does produce something, that produces something, it's more of a political intention, I think, than say I wouldn't call it scientific, because it isn't based on actual ecological data as much as it is opinions. This is what's, but that's fine if that's the intent and purpose of it. It's just that if you're going to do that, you really have to have complete data sets. You can't have this spotty stuff and expect it to be meaningful, because lo and behold, the end results all kind of look like the Wildlife Action Plan, where the studies have been done. So that's pretty predictable, I think.
I think their main constraint was that they got a grant, and maybe they should have defined it with more input from the town first before heading forward. But they got a grant to do this kind of GIS analysis, and have taken it with the data sets that they have and have gone forward with it. So you mentioned earlier, I think, that there were some general goals that seemed good. I came up with it with sort of 4 pieces of this. There's the general goals, there's their data sets, there's their methodology for turning data sets into final maps. And then there's a 4th thing that's sort of missing, which is how do you incorporate new data into it? And I've asked them that. They don't have any plans at this time to do that. So I guess that would be, if I don't think you mentioned that. If you haven't, that would be the one thing that I would really stress to them, which is tell us how you're going to be able to add, or provide a way of adding updated data to the
Right.
data sets.
I didn't ask that specific question, what's your method for getting data in, but did kind of make the point that I feel like, no, you have to get the data in first before you do these final predictions.
That actually was brought up when someone came and presented it. We asked, we said, will it be tied in? Will it automatically update? And he said, well, it'll probably be updated every 5 years or so. So, you're gonna get the set of maps, and they're gonna exist in space until the new, set is produced. And that was one of Collis's concerns, is once this thing is out there,
Right.
people are gonna look at these values, and without understanding the process behind it or the flaws, they're gonna say, gee, Goffstown doesn't have a lot of valuable land, we should put our stuff in New Boston or where or whatever. So it was, that was the, concern.
Or it could misdirect it within a town too. You could actually miss the more important areas and be focusing on a less important area.
Right.
It's
Right.
not the true priority if the data isn't quite correct.
I think we expressed at that time a really strong concern about this being set in stone when we really weren't
Mhm.
pleased with how it was going right off the bat, so.
And I like the way you wrote this up, David, and I like the
Yes.
tone, and I definitely appreciate you guys going to the meeting and representing our concerns and getting it out on record, so that's really
Do
good.
we need a vote to say that the whole commission, or is this, are we gonna,
We can
David
if we want
presented
to.
this, but I think you should for the record that
Why
this
don't you
is
make
what
a motion?
I move that, David Neben's response to this, study, which I think we've all read, comments on the Pecatoquag River Watershed Land Conservation Plan be sent to be voted on and then sent to the
Southern New Hampshire Planning
right,
Commission.
right, thank you.
Okay,
As our response to this.
okay. Jean seconds.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? No? Okay, motion carried. And thank you, David, and thank you, Jason, for representing our interests in this. It's been really good. You want to add it?
Just an FYI, my guess is they probably won't change things much, which, that's it. But I know part of their intended process is then, after they come up with the final draft, to promote towns to accept it as part of their master plan. So I'll just give you a heads up, that's kind of what they're looking for. And I guess what I'm hearing is that based on what they have, that wouldn't necessarily be appropriate for Goffstown at this time.
That's a good
Yeah,
suggestion.
Certainly something I can mention.
I read that part as well, understood that that's one of the goals, and that's how I would come down on it, is no, not until it's accurate.
Okay. Great.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your hard work on this, Jason. And David. Okay, sorry. So we'll return to the agenda. So first up, we have a public discussion with Fournier Revocable Trust regarding map 7, lot 82, landscaping business site plan on Patty Hill Road.
Yes, if I could, my name is Kevin Ballmer with Divine Development. Mr. Mr. Fournier's attorney. I just want to speak very briefly. Peter Schauer, the wetland scientist, is here as well, just to go over some of the issues and the results that we've gotten since the last meeting. The
Did everyone
primary-
see the results from,
I hope everyone got the DES letter.
where are we? So you guys have plans in front of you? Yep, okay.
The primary issue that arose the last meeting was that a complaint had been filed with DES that there had been wetland and alteration of terrain violations on the property. DES has since done an inspection of the property that occurred on June 11th, and the letter that you should all have on June 14th. Their determination was that there were no wetlands or alteration of terrain violations.
Do we all have that letter?
Yes, it got mailed to everybody.
It did? Yep. Okay.
Kim, you wanna look it
I
over?
got my pile here, sorry, I went through the wrong pile. I read the letter, I just wanted to make sure everybody else got a chance to see it and take a look at it. So, yes, okay, thank
Peter-
you.
Peter Schauer was there as well, and so he's here tonight if anyone has any questions.
And I spoke to Chris Bryson too, so, yes.
Okay, great. Also briefly, another issue that came up was non-permitted septic, moved septic field, I think. I apologize, I only have one copy. It was just issued today, but Mr. Fournier has received approval for the septic system. We're going to can give you one copy. I just received it. We'll be submitting this to the planning board tomorrow night as well, so I'm happy to bring extra copies at that time to give to either Brian or Patty if you guys would like, if you'd like
No,
copies.
Patty's got the official copy, that's fine.
Okay, and then the last issue that, that Dean Gibson, one of the abutters brought up was the, potential impact from salt. First, I know you had not, at that point, had a chance to look over the results. I just want to make one statement of concern, on our part, and that is that Mr. Gibson himself, who's clearly adverse to Mr. Fournier, to this proposal, took those samples, so I have some concerns of the validity. That said, I don't want to downplay the potential impact of salt. We understand that. I think regardless of the specific results, I think we'll have addressed the salt issue by meeting the variance condition, putting we'll have a cover on the salt shed, which is already existing, and a concrete pad. As part of the revisions to the site plan, those are still ongoing, but we're going to propose that that concrete pad actually be extended beyond the front of the salt pile, essentially so that any trucks backing in would be on top of the pad, and any spills between the pile and the truck would be contained. So I think that addresses all of the concerns that were voiced last meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions, and again, Mr. Schauer is here as well to address any questions.
The salt values that we were presented with were really high. And I'm not really sure what the situation is for rectifying that.
Well, I-
Do you know what you're
you know, I
required to
know
do?
Those are salt values for, what's their impacts to freshwater organisms. So drinking water, these are not results that were taken in a freshwater body, a stream or a pond. They were taken on the ground. There are no groundwater standards for chloride. There are some drinking water standards that deal with aesthetics, but again, we're not talking about impacts to drinking water. But I believe, again, I do question these specific results, not the concern over salt. I think we'll have fully contained the salt and the salt runoff by having a roof and a floor on that salt shed.
Well, I guess probably the concern is moving forward, that is, I mean, you're complying with, those are what obviously must be the required laws for salt sheds or those sort of things.
No,
Go
When I
ahead.
had originally called DES, and I think I had stated to call us, all they had stated for me at that time, they said, I didn't need a florist, it needed to be covered, there was the best management practice, and that's what I went and did. The other thing is, I would have got a water sample myself, but that water stopped running, shortly, a week after April, I think, after
Right.
you guys left.
Right.
It stopped, so there's no place for me to
Right.
get any samples to be able to approve it otherwise.
Okay. Okay. So, Commission, what we have in front of us is a plan that we need to comment on. You guys are up at planning tomorrow night, is that correct? You've heard from the abutters, we've heard from the wetland scientists, we've heard from the state. Does anyone have any questions for either the applicant or his wetland scientist?
You're gonna be continued, right? You're requesting to be continued,
We've
but you need to go
requested to be
before the board.
continued, although the planning board has, at their last meeting, I understand, because we weren't present, that they have some concerns about continuing and have talked about not continuing. I'm hopeful that we'll convince them, because we've been trying to address your concerns among other concerns. But yes, the plan is to continue tomorrow night.
And Brian is recommending they continue it. He has a
Brian
recommendation to
Rose.
continue.
Okay, yes. Okay, why are we still continuing it? Why, you still have outstanding design issues, or?
We have designed it, we had waited to complete the design issue, the final plans, because we wanted to make sure that the wetlands issues were fully addressed.
Right,
So they're in progress, and the drainage, there's additional drainage engineering that's in progress, which should be completed shortly, but not by tomorrow night.
okay. And just to remind everyone, because this isn't a subdivision, they don't technically have to stay out of the wetland buffer at all, although they are. I believe you're maybe 50 feet, at least, maybe even 100 or 75 feet off of, if everybody looks at the map, there's this wetland here. And nothing is happening to the western portion of the property. It's all happening on the gravel that's already on site. I believe the majority of the squabble has been about the gravel on site as it is currently, so. So when we look at this site in terms of Conservation Commission concerns, we've been told by DES they didn't fill historic wetland. Frankly, I'm shocked, but sometimes water running across the site doesn't make a wetland. They letter in the discussion I had with Chris is that it was historic sheet flow, which the abutters may have thought was a wetland, but there wasn't the soils to hold it. So, and we don't see any impact to the potential wetlands to the existing wetlands to the west. There are off-site wetlands that this may drain to, but I believe that you are addressing those. For example, this gravel area, I mean, those of us who went out there, it's like this. And so the water that comes off of that dumps just off your property. How is that being addressed? Is that still something that's outstanding, or?
Yes,
Go
my name
ahead.
is Don Duval, I'm the surveyor. We've hired an engineer, Robert Rook, and basically at the edge of that gravel, he's having some retention basins, a series of them.
Okay,
The water will sheet flow off, settle, and then he has some
Okay.
weird situations, so we're handling the water as it runs off.
okay,
We hesitated doing that immediately, like I say, until we got the letter from the DES that we didn't impact with. Now we can go forward.
right. You can't design it if you thought you were gonna have to remove the foam. I understand that. It's a very, very small area from that toe of slope to the stone wall, which is the property line. So good luck with, that'll be fun engineering.
I guess my only comment, though, is that we would want to make a comment to the planning board that if they are having any kind of detention pond, meaning this is part of a drainage and wanting to slow it up to protect the abutters, that we ought to make sure we know who is going to be inspecting that, or, I mean, because it has to be maintained over years, and if it's not, then you're just going to have a problem. If it breaks down, then your abutters are gonna have a problem, if I'm reading what you're saying.
I mean, you've got 10 to 20 feet in this area to try to design a system, which isn't impossible, but
No, but
Do you
I think
want
we
to?
should say as a caution, that would be
It's gonna be
one
in the
of our.
high, on the uphill, not on the low,
If I may
not at the
just,
toe.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Do
Oh,
we
you
get
mean
at
at the
the
top
up
of the
end?
gravel area?
yeah, if
Gotcha.
I may interject, we dropped off a couple of works in progress with Brian, and I left him 2 copies. He's reviewing one, realizing it's a work in progress, and he was gonna give the other copy to Megan. I don't know if he ever
Okay.
gave her, if that got to him yet.
Okay.
So they have an idea of where we're going.
So do we want to, we can comment tonight, or we can wait to see Reside's plans and comment on it later? I'm not actually sure how much it would change our comments, with that being that Megan and Brian would,
Right.
assure us that the detention system is gonna work as it should. So I'm not sure that would actually change how we would comment on this tonight, but if you guys choose to, we can ask him to come back.
I don't feel it's a coming
The
back, I just
boards.
said that would be, and I'm sure it's a heads up for them, but that would be our concern. I would still think that we have concerns that any water coming onto the property is not going to continue washing down materials that they are, storing, and, that I really do think there has to be built in, which I think the planning board is now starting to do, but some, schedule of,
Maintenance.
yeah, maintenance and compliance to that, that it's not just that it be built and that's the end of it, so.
So I guess that would be the major concern, Patty, would be that the detention basins are maintained as they should be to continue to function properly.
A maintenance plan is part of the.
A detention basin maintenance plan is part
Yeah.
of it, so,
Thank
which
you.
we're all becoming a lot more savvy on, which is nice
Yeah.
to see, so. Anyone else have any other comments? Susan? Nick? Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just maybe a comment that all of the concerns that the commission initially had been satisfactorily
Right,
addressed.
that is correct, yes, DES addressed our concerns, and we postponed our commenting on this because we wanted to find out what DES had to say, so.
So I'll report, all concerns have been addressed, but you want to make sure the detention ponds are properly maintained and that there is a maintenance plan in place?
Yes.
Right,
Okay.
yes. Anyone else have any other comments? Questions for the applicant? No? Okay, I think that's it. I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Should've-
I guess maybe as a side,
I
Patty,
think it's going up and down.
how much would a plan change before we wanted it back? I mean, I don't think this plan is gonna change much more than its current state.
Move around the salt,
Yeah.
the pad area, I know that was one thing. I know they're working like with the barn, and he's correct about the detention basins that they're looking at, and Megan did get a copy, I don't know if she's looked at it.
Okay.
Hey, do they, I have no idea what the size of this outfit is or what they're gonna do. Do they ever do you know how many trucks they expect to,
That I don't know. I
Nothing
don't even
on
know
it.
that's been asked.
No.
It would
Karen brought that
seem-
up at one point, but I don't know.
So then that's gonna be flushing right down into into Goffstown, right down the center of Goffstown, correct? I mean, I'm just
believe,
wondering,
yeah.
and so are they great big huge dump trucks?
I don't know if there's a limit to the size a landscaping company can be, and it's definitely something that's come up because of that other one that we've got in front of us in Pinardville, potential landscaping company. I don't know what the regulations are regarding this sizes or what they can do or can't do.
I
think-
would assume that they're addressing that either in the zoning or planning.
Well, I would hope.
Well,
but I
you'd like to
wouldn't-
think that, but frankly, zoning caught this 5 years ago, and it's just now being addressed. So, I mean, if it's a question we want to ask, we can ask.
Well, I'm just thinking, it's
The
not so
size of
much
the
a-
operation.
Well, the size, and now, see, that to me would be, the weight of huge dump trucks, depending on what it is, that's hard on roads. That's just my, as a citizen, just wondering.
It's big
And
enough
the
to park a lot of trucks. I don't really
Well,
know the
I
size
guess
of their
what I was
operation.
Yeah, because they do have an awful lot of parking. I mean, I just wondered what the size of the outfit is. I mean, what are we proposing here? You have no idea?
Well, planning used to put a standard comment on some site plans out that if traffic becomes a nuisance, they are allowed to readdress. That might be something.
Could we?
Add that?
Yeah, can we add that?
That's
as a-
really
as
not
a
a,
planning
that's not a
conservation
conservation
concern?
No, I mean, that's
The
just,
applicants
that's,
have left, and
Okay,
now
yeah,
we're.
you're
that's
right, you're
the
right,
only,
you're right.
that is,
I should've
and they may
asked.
do that, I mean.
Fair's fair.
Right,
Okay.
right.
I know you're familiar with that standard comment that.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, moving on. Discussion with Eric Mitchell regarding map 9, lot 33-7, 46 and 60, Blackbriar Woods, 19 lot open space subdivision. Patty, bring me up to date with where we are in this process, because I forgot.
I don't have revised plans yet, but they are coming back to planning. I'm gonna be sending out notices this week. They are gonna be bringing a new yield plan, which I don't know if that's what he's gonna show you. And their
got one here
proposal
that's
is to
drawn.
reduce it by 2 lots,
Yes.
right? Is that correct?
I have a plan here that was drawn on, and then I have a second plan.
That's because I grabbed them from what they had before planning.
Oh, gotcha.
So they are revising the plans, and it's going to be, a new yield plan's gonna be presented to the board on the 8th,
The old one, maybe?
and they're reducing the number of lots.
Okay, so we're going to have a new yield plan that will reduce, so it's proposed now for 19 lots, and,
Right, okay.
I don't have the revised plan yet.
Okay.
I just got the money today to notify.
Okay.
okay.
Yeah,
Some other copies coming up.
Oh, yeah. You want one for me?
I guess I just got this one.
Vic, you want?
That's the new one. I can just watch.
No, there's extra copies there. There's-
Oh, here you go. There you
This one?
go. Okay. Okay, Mr. Mitchell, why don't you, so this was or was not site-walked? We site-walked the conceptual. We did not site-walk this as a plan. Is that correct, Kim?
That's correct.
Correct. Yes, thank you. That's correct. And David, yes, that's right. You guys walked the conceptual. So we still, at this point, need to do an official site walk of the proposed plan.
Correct.
Gotcha.
To bring you up to speed,
Oh, I did change.
we did have a sidewalk scheduled, I believe. And in our end of the process, we've been to planning board, the yield plan was approved.
Oh, that's right.
And we had a site walk scheduled. One thing that we did is to have Peter Shower go out to verify if there's any vernal pools on the property. All the wetlands had been mapped. Unfortunately, when he was out to verify vernal pools, he found additional wetlands on the property in the area where we were going to put our road. That's when we said, we can't do the site walk now, we have to determine what we're gonna do as a plan. And the plans that will be brought back to the planning board will show a yield plan of, instead of 25 lots, it would be 23 lots. And as far as the open space development plan, you see the concept here. We had proposed 19 total. There's an existing house plus 18 vacant lots. Here, there's 2 less, which is existing house and 16 new lots. The areas that
I only see 13.
uh,
1, 2.
goes up to 17 here?
17.
Sorry, I can't count.
Okay. This wetland here, here's our old cul-de-sac that we showed, the proposed cul-de-sac. That fell right at the toe. It is an isolated wetland, but that was not on the original mapping. There's a wetland here that's less than 2,000 square feet that wasn't there. And out here at the bigger wetland, this tail, or inlet, whatever you want to call, was not part of that. So this wetland here was new, this is new, and this is new. The dark green, or all the green that you have, the outer one is a 100-foot setback. So when we apply that to the 2 wetlands greater than 2,000 square feet, you can see that we have a big area through here that we're planning for lots that we can't use. So what we have done, even the cul-de-sac, it would be up adjacent to it. It'd be well within the inner 50-foot setback. We did not plan to ask for relief for that. So what we've come up with, this concept, we wanted to show it to you, and then also we'd be looking at the yield plan in a week and a half or 2 weeks with the planning board. We show a tear dot cul-de-sac as opposed to the one that's out here. We expect the filling and grading for the cul-de-sac to stay out of the 100-foot setback. If you look over through here in the corner, this is where our original sediment control and our stormwater treatment was happening. It was all within what was the 50-foot, the outer 50-foot setback. Well, all that's been scratched because of where it's located, but we're gonna try to put some right in through here off to the left-hand side, right-hand side of the cul-de-sac. Some of that is outside of the 100-foot buffer, and some of it would be inside the outer 50 feet. In addition to that, We have a driveway off the end of the cul-de-sac before, we didn't have any wetland impact, I'm sorry, a buffer impact, but we would propose a driveway to come into what is lot 12 shown here. It would stay outside of the innermost 50 feet, but be in the outermost 50 feet of one of the new isolated wetlands. And lastly, because I don't think you've seen this plan, we have a stormwater treatment measure that is in the 100-foot, the outer 50 feet. The 50-foot setback is here and one's over here. This is an area that's been used in the past for cutting of cordwood. It's all open, all the trees have been disturbed, and so for some of the water coming down the road, we want to do some treatment there, which would be in the buffer. We were getting to the point where we're gonna have a function values analysis done, submitted to you for your review, and go through the process with the planning board. But part of doing that was to look for the vernal pools, and we got stopped pretty abruptly to figure out what we're gonna do next. So I know that with the commission, we do have to reset that site walk. It may be appropriate to do that after we hear from the planning board to make sure our yield plan is gonna be still okay. When the yield plan, we had 25 lots shown. The consensus was that we would be allowed to have the 19 lots that we were asking for the open space. They didn't debate whether or not it was 24, 23, 25. Some says, well, I count 6 minus 25 is 19, I guess you're okay. I expect the same type of rationale will happen in a week and a half or so, or I guess 2 weeks from tomorrow?
July 8th, yeah.
Yeah. And if we still have the right to have the 17 lots, this is the type of approach that we'd like to go on. We're willing to work with the commission as far as your schedule as to what you want to do, but we can walk it prior to the planning board, but it may be more appropriate to set it up for the weekend after the planning board perhaps, or in the evenings if that's something that you do this time of year. And we'd like to have some comment, either you can hold your comments until we have a site walk again, but we are proposing to be in the outer 50-foot buffer in 3 areas, 1 for a driveway and 2 places for stormwater treatment, but not within the innermost 50 feet.
It's graded here, then there's nothing.
Well, I would say that without seeing these plans, and I know this is still kind of preliminary, but planning usually expects to see that, the building square, whatever that measurement is, because lot 3 just looks, and 4 and 13, look pretty small as far as buildable envelope.
Right.
So it's hard for us to see that without those squares on the plan. We would need at least that to get an idea of, could you cram a house onto 3, which I would say no, but, the lots to the south look much better.
As far as the yield plan, when we show a yield plan with the 2-acre lots, we do show the 80 by 100 foot buildable rectangle on those. But these lots you're looking at here are half-acre lots, not 2-acre lots. So the buildable square doesn't really apply. The zoning ordinance with the open space development, certain portions of that don't apply anymore. And that's one of them. The lots are reduced dimension. There can be up to a quarter of what they required, which is instead of 2 acres, we can have half-acre. Frontage can be reduced to 50 feet, which is a quarter of what the 200 feet would be. And the setbacks are different. Those are specified in the ordinance itself. I think there's 15 feet on the front and 15 feet on the side yards. That's in the zoning ordinance itself under the open space. The buildable square is for a conventional lot. So you would not have, not necessarily have those buildable squares here inside the setbacks as you would on the 2-acre subdivision. These are much smaller lots. They would be smaller houses, but there is a different rationale once we go to open space than what we would have under the regular grid lots.
Really?
Yep.
Wow, we always see our plans with the squares on them. It's hard to tell where you'd put a house on that lot.
No, I don't doubt that you want to see how that lot would be developed, and we can do that.
Yes, that would be important for us to see those ideas. And also to see the acreage of each of these lots. I mean, to see like what percentage of, I don't know. We always have buffer impacts from homeowners who want to mow it and put trees and pools and croquet lawns on them and just, But anyway, so, anybody have any questions?
guess, so we're really, it would seem to me that we're gonna get before we do the site walk again, we're going to have the next plan, because I would think that this drainage area would really be, what they've built here, you said that's no longer gonna be there. That's the way I would look at it, that I'd like to see the next plan before we go out and site walk this. Cause I think the things that you're moving and putting someplace else are the critical things that we'll want to know where they are and what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just plan the site walk after.
Well, it would make more sense to have a sidewalk after planning anyway, because
Yeah.
we wouldn't wanna have to do the sidewalk, then planning says change this, and then you have to do the sidewalk again, so
Right.
We've done that.
wouldn't do you any.
Yeah.
Unless we went to
Anything.
planning and then had a site walk and you said change this, so we
Yeah.
would go that way.
It would
So you're
just
saying we wanna
simplify
hold
it.
off on comment until after our July meeting?
I find it hard to comment on something that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, unless there's any comments that we
I
think
mean,
should
right
go
now, I
to
think
planning
we-
in their consideration, that would be
Well,
the only.
3 and 4 and 13 were questionable,
Okay.
just in terms of the building envelope.
And as far as scheduling, we're gonna be before the planning board on the 8th, and that sort of just came up very recently, that Brian recommended we do that. And even this meeting came up just last week. Why don't you go to the Conservation Commission if there's an opening? We are also on the agenda, I believe, for the 24th or 22nd, the last week of the month, with the planning board.
That's gonna be
So-
like the regular public hearing. The 8th is on acceptance of the new yield plan.
Okay. All
And
right,
that's
so
all
You'll
we'd
have a
be
meeting
talking about there.
before.
So then we will have the next meeting will be before the public hearing?
Yeah.
Okay, so, but to do that then, if we wait then until we see the sidewalk, until after our next meeting, they're gonna go to planning without comments, which is gonna push them off another couple of weeks, because we won't have sidewalked it.
I think
But
we
if
all
that's what
get
you
the
wanna do.
Schedule's all getting a little confused here, so the next planning is,
They're going before for
Yield
the
plan.
yield plan on the 8th. The
Right.
22nd is gonna be, they get into beyond the yield plan and get into the actual subdivision.
Which is at that time when you'll come back to our meeting, we'll look over that plan, and I think then we'll be ready to sidewalk it.
So he could come in, they could come in that's the day before,
Right.
the 21st.
Right. Which will
Oh,
put
correct on
which
the
will put
date.
the sidewalk off after. So really, your public hearing, which will be on the 22nd, won't have our substantive comments because we wouldn't have sidewalked it. Unless we choose to sidewalk it in the middle of July, based on this preliminary plan.
Well, this-
And then
this is
discuss
still
it at
labeled
your meeting
conceptual.
before the planning,
And I
Right.
don't think,
which you could do. And then planning only meets once in August. Second week,
makes sense to me.
is the only.
You wanna wait?
I don't think it makes sense to basically do a conceptual sidewalk. I'd rather see
We've
what,
already done one conceptual sidewalk, actually.
forget it
Yes.
then. And when we do go out there, we're gonna have the center of the road marked, and then I guess there's a lot of disturbance, when you're in this curve here, right in the wetlands. So besides putting a center of the, if this is in the future when we do our site walk, if you could stake where your proposed cuts, or, or fills are in that area, so that when we get out there visually, you can really see where this whole thing is, the road and the rest of that is build up, and that's
And
going
the
to be-
reason it curves so much as opposed to going straight and crossing the wetland at the narrowest point is,
That was a result of our initial, the first site walk. When I had drawn the plans, there's a little area in through here, which I took that to be the path to get out back. I didn't read my own plan very clearly. This is actually a short in height dam right here. This is an impoundment. And so in seeing that, the actual roadway was crossing through here. The question was, okay, you can't cross here over the dam, we didn't intend to, so put it down below here or put it up above. And if we were to
Right,
come
above
right
there.
straight in, we would have a similar wetland impact, but the site of this would be going straight downhill all the way in, just a great boulevard going in. And we felt it was better, even though it's additional pavement, to try to put some geometry to the road so that it wouldn't be just a straight shot going down in.
but then you end up with that huge, it's
We would
quite
anyway.
an engineering.
We would anyway, because
Yeah.
it drops off quite a bit. I think 20 feet, 25 feet between here and here. So if we came straight, the road would be shorter, the fill would be just as high, if not higher.
What if it was,
And we have more length on it, so the grade is a little bit,
what if it was coming in down further to the, bottom, on the
I don't-
other side of the existing house?
over here.
Yeah, coming up through there.
And you
Uh,
have two big
I don't think we would have sight distance there, and we would be right in the buffer to swing. This is our property line. To swing to come in there, we'd be right in the buffer here. We do have the possibility of coming in further down the road, but we would be crossing these wetlands to get in.
Yeah.
This is a very wet site.
And what is your potential wetland impact, do you know? Do you have a rough square footage? I see 6 foot by 4 foot by 95 foot L box culvert.
And this, you probably have 5,000 square feet, something like that. And would be the only wetland impact on there.
Will that trigger mitigation for the state?
Pardon me?
Will that trigger mitigation for the state?
Not that alone, over 10,000 square feet would trigger mitigation. But our mitigation anyway would be the conservation easement and open space in the back,
Ah, yes, let's not
Which-
forget there's a huge,
which greatly
everybody
needs
look at
that.
the picture at the bottom, you have the huge open space easement in the back. Okay.
One thing we could do, if the board was willing, or commission was willing, is that we'll be going to the planning board on the 8th in 2 weeks to see if our yield plan's okay. Whatever lot numbers they approve, and we would expect it would be 17, we hope it would be, then this is the concept we go by. But if they're gonna act on the plan in earnest 2 weeks later, we're gonna have to turn around and give them more final plans right away, which we would. If we submit the same ones to the commission, they can be available to go out with a site walk in the interim between the meetings and still meet with you the night before the planning board meeting. So today, we don't have those plans, but they would be worked on. They're not gonna change from here out. It's just, and actually, the road's in the same location to here. So we can change those plans probably within a week of that planning board meeting and give plans to you about 10 days before your next meeting, if you wanna schedule a site walk.
What if we decided to schedule a site walk that weekend before the meeting? Gives them enough time to shift their plans if they need to. Then we'll have a site walk and we'll be able to talk about it
Yeah, the meeting.
3 days
I
later.
think you need to talk about it. I mean,
Yes, oh yes, we'll definitely then need to talk about it as a group again.
as a group, right?
So, how do we feel about that?
I think that's a good idea.
All right, what's that date? Back me up. Not July 19th, 18th,
Get our calendar out.
somebody.
And are your site walks just on the weekends, or you do them in the evenings now?
I don't know, it depends on when people are available.
Okay.
I'm only available weekends.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's coming on the 22nd, so then he'd wanna come in here. So you'd have like, the 17th is a Saturday, and then you have the 18th is the Sunday.
Okay, so how does anybody feel about Saturday the 17th?
I can do either day.
I can only do Sunday,
Sunday, how do you feel about Sundays?
only if it was early.
I'm awake.
Oh, yeah. Because we gotta get breakfast eaten and back to the house.
Does conservation meet before planning?
Yes, we meet the night before planning then.
Because it has it listed as the 28th.
Oh, it has to be the
Oh,
fourth
yeah,
Wednesday.
that's right, the 4th.
Oh.
Would have to be.
Yeah,
Oh,
so it would be after.
huh. You wanna do it that next weekend then? What's that, 18 plus 7 is 25?
24 and 25.
24 and 25? Because then they'll be at planning. Well, it really only gives them a couple days to change anything if they had to. But, so I don't think either weekend makes a difference.
I think which weekend is most convenient for you?
Yeah. I don't have a schedule, so right now I don't know. I would assume I'm free for a Sunday morning sidewalk.
Okay.
So the 18th or the 25th? Anybody?
I'm sure I'm available the 18th. 8 o'clock.
Okay, let's do
Like it.
Sunday the 18th,
Just write it down.
8 o'clock. And yes, we will hopefully get to see as many stakes out there as
Yep.
possible that we can get an idea of where we
Sure,
are walking.
we'll have it all staked out. We can meet right at they place the park right along the house here, you know, the
Okay.
park in the street.
Excellent. Okay, good.
You all set?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you very much.
You know, I guess there's one other thing I would do again. As long as you're in the field and you're marking things, that when you come up with your new plan for your, I'm gonna say your treatment swale here, if you could also mark that in the
Yep.
field so that you can see, again, you know where the road is, and, right, that makes it real easy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay. This will go with you,
Okay,
just so you keep it.
somebody keep it. I'll take a set too. But if they change, we're probably gonna get
Oh,
changed
that's
plans
right.
anyway. These will be nice finger painting sheets for the kids.
Okay.
Okay, moving on, we're at finance. Finance?
The current use, the current balance for the Conservation Commission current use fund is at present $237,031.01. That's an increase. There was an additional 19,000 deposit, and that includes that and interest paid. Our budget, stands right now as $3,131.41. I did ask at the last meeting when Derek Horn was here to find out, what was the, I added up from last month's meeting, there was a difference of $321.22, what that was from. Patty was kind enough to research it for me, and that is basically between that and also $44.37 this month, and that is basically what it is for, is for minute taking and postage, for today. So that is where that money is going to.
Yep.
So, okay.
Good. Anybody have any questions? Excellent. Okay, Open Space Committee, you wanna give us an update, anything?
Committee did not meet, taking some time off.
Okay, good.
Waiting for the account to grow so we can do something.
Okay. Okay, the minutes of May 26th, did anybody read them?
I do.
I read them.
I read them. I do have one comment.
Okay.
Stating in the, when I had the discrepancy where I wasn't quite sure where that, the difference of $321.22 from our operating budget. And David Neiman said that, you'll see in there in the minutes, it's on page 7, that it said that I confirmed that the amount is equal to the secretary's payment for minutes and other duties. I said to David, that would make sense, it would come from there, but I'm not confirming it because I didn't know. So I didn't confirm it because I really didn't know at that time. It made sense at that time, that's where the expenses came from. So I did confirm it with Patty
Okay.
recently.
What page
So-
are you on?
7 out of 16. But I did not know it at that time, and it looks like I did, and I did not.
So maybe we could change that statement, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs down. Kim
Right.
Ricard reviewed the budget sheet provided and stated that, what, that would make sense.
That would make sense, and
That
that
it's the
would,
secretary's payment for minutes and other secretarial duties. Okay.
can leave it that.
Strike confirmed, right? Okay.
Okay.
Don't want to add that in retrospect, your prescient knowledge and understanding of the budget was right on.
And thank God to
And
Patty
she was
Gale.
correct. So, yes, okay, so thank you. So, okay, so we want to make a motion to accept them as edited? So moved. Susan moves, second. Jean, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Excellente, all right. Timber cut permits, Village Water Precinct, map 1, lot 38, Mountain Road. Do I have these, or are they in my correspondence file, or? Do I have it here in my pile here?
The timber cuts,
Uh-huh,
they're in the correspondence,
thank you.
but you're gonna have to,
Alrighty. Sorry. Sort through these, budget. Budget. Okay, timber cut, map 1, lot 38, Mountain Road. Gotham Village Water Precinct. Anybody have a problem with that? 4,000, I don't know. Tree chips, 50 what is it, MBF, is that million board feet? Mega board feet. Here, you wanna see the pretty map? Lovely. cutting up there. Okay, anybody have any issues? No, okay. James and Louis Alger, map 3, lot 62-2 for Violet Street. Let me know, where is that?
I was just wondering.
Where's Alger Street? Oh, well, I have a map, I'm sure.
It's like Bernardville, right on the edge of
I was
Manchester.
thinking
Oh.
it sounded,
I don't know, somewhere in here in Pinardville.
huh.
Alger
Off
Street.
of Rockland,
Oh, here's the house. Off of what?
Rockland.
Off of Rockland, yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, Violet Street. No, this is Violet Street. Oh, yeah, Violet Street. Thank you. 110 Violet Street. And they are cutting, I don't know. What are they cutting? What does it say? Corduroy crossing. I wonder what that means. Oh, this is a timber cut from the winter storm, planned to salvage when the ground is dry.
Okay.
Corduroy will be 14 foot wide and 20 foot long. Oh, that's the crossing. Oh, impacting 280 square feet of wetland. I plan to install a corduroy crossing over a seasonally wet area at the edge of my field before going uphill into the woods. The corduroy will be 14 feet wide, 20 feet long, impacting 280 square feet. Okay. Also note, Goffstown has a 100-foot no-cut buffer around certain brooks or streams. However, this crossing is not located on any of those designated areas. Good. And they also got a forestry notification from DES as well that said you are sufficient to proceed.
Kim, would that be something though, since it's crossing the wetland and all this, that we should ask that it's checked after it's done? Is that something that needs to be done because of the crossing and all that?
It might be something that we would want to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that's
Is
what I
it-
mean.
We do, is that Derek's supposed to be doing that?
Derek?
I would imagine, Derek.
I think Derek is supposed to be checking on, you know, timber cut. Somebody in town should be, is
Right.
supposed to be.
The state enforces the actual timber cut.
There's a forest ranger that comes
Yeah,
and
we
checks
went
it.
Oh,
through
the
that
forest
last
ranger will
time.
come and check it?
Yeah.
The forest ranger
Okay.
comes and marks your.
But if they
your-
go into the wetlands or anything, that's Derek gets
Okay.
involved.
Marks your thing,
Okay.
that he's been there.
Okay.
Okay. Right, because here's their application to DES. And it says you've avoided wetlands and stream crossings where possible, except following best management practices. Okay. Okay, good. All right, Town and City. All right, correspondence. Copy of the letter from Chris Bryson. Okay, we all understand how that went.
Yeah, can I speak to that, please? I understand the meeting's over, but I'd like to make a statement to the board.
Sure. State your name for the record, please.
Dean Gibson, 163 Patty Hill, Butter, California. We're actually challenging that letter. We were asked to be a participant in that water. We were denied access to the property. Rick Vanderpool is actually meeting with Linda Magoon tomorrow to challenge the validity of that letter. Also, exactly what I thought would happen did happen. I finally missed a meeting, wonderful, postponed and moved so many times that I missed tonight's meeting by accident. For that, I apologize. It doesn't do me any good at this point. But how you guys find no concern of the cuts and fills that have been put on my property line, absolutely, I cannot believe it. And somebody questions the validity of my water test. I tested for multiple other things, and those things didn't come back escalated. The nitrate levels from all the grass that got dumped over, and I didn't take nitrate and dump it in the water. And if they don't think that that 420 number is accurate, then why don't they test the brook behind my house and see what the number is? Why should us as abutters, we've already spent thousands of dollars in experts to challenge what's going on between us. Why do I have to spend more than $300 that I spent on these water tests? Why do I have to spend $6 to have somebody else independently test this water? If, at what point is enough enough? I mean, you know what I mean? Do I have to spend $600 to test the water? Am I a liar? Am I adding salt to the water? I just don't want everything killed behind my house. And the fact that the board isn't floored by a 420 salt count in the brook behind my house, I just can't even believe it. I just can't believe it. I can't believe that you guys aren't appalled by 16. Would anybody on this board want to live next to a 16-foot raise in elevation to their property line, toppling over the stone walls of their property? And that doesn't seem to alarm anybody on this board. And so anyways, the board member that I'm actually looking directly at was at that sidewalk. She knows what she saw. She is a soil scientist also. You know the water that you saw coming down off behind the salt shed. You know the water that was coming out of the banking. You know the plants that are growing on the downhill side of the slope of the fill, I know that you know what you saw.
Yes.
You know, how there could be any other conclusion, Rick Vanderpool is beside himself, because they're questioning the validity of his findings, and he is a far more expert than Chris Bryson. Okay, so he's beside himself more about somebody questioning his integrity than he is about the Fournier property at this point.
I can say three
He
things.
has to be there, and we're denied access.
Okay, I can say three things. One, I'm not a soil scientist or a wetland scientist within the state, although that is what I do for a living. I'm not a certified wetland scientist in the state of New Hampshire. So I tried to tend away from staying out of pissing matches with other wetland scientists because I'm not technically certified in the state. Secondly, you are correct about the water samples, and I would suggest that you submit a formal request to planning, which, as we discussed last time, we're a recommendation board. We can't ask the applicant to do this water sampling, but the planning board can. The planning board can say, applicant, we want to see a comparable set of testing, and I would imagine that they will, but I would suggest that you write a letter to the planning board and saying that if there's questions about the water sample results, that planning board asked the applicant to have a rebuttal. Third, I understand that there is disagreement at DES regarding this issue, and what I can say to you is that we're not a group of certified wetland scientists. I can't question it professionally. This group can't question it professionally. If we've got a letter from DES saying it's not a historic wetland, you have to go jurisdictionally above this group. We have a letter from DES saying that there wasn't a historic fill. There's nothing else that we can do unless DES needs to disagree amongst themselves. We obviously have someone here tonight who has to step back from this role because we understand that this is going, or for those of you who don't know, this is going to a higher level at DES, and there will be disagreement and issues, but it's something that we're not wetland scientists, and so all we can do is take what we're given. So for the official record, I can't sit here and tell you, I mean, I suspected that it was a wetland fill, but if someone from the state tells me that their ruling is that it was a wetland fill, we can't question that.
I understand, but just so you know that it's not over. I mean,
We
we're
understand
challenging
that.
letter that was issued, you know, and my scientist is more upset about it than I am.
I know Rick, and I can understand that he's probably beside himself over
Because
this.
somebody's questioning his integrity.
Yes,
And I think he's a little more,
yes. And we all understand that this issue is probably not finished.
you know, I just can't believe as a board that you guys don't have any concerns about everything that's gone on in this property next to me. You know, no concern? You know, I'm driving home from Atkinson, getting a phone call saying, how come you're not sitting at this meeting? I'm like, I can't believe it. I can't believe I missed a meeting. You know, and this stuff gets continued and continued, and the abutters continue to spend thousands of dollars trying to stop something that never should have been there to begin with, and the saga goes on.
And I do understand your frustrations, and we have had frustrations with zoning enforcement, and I think that that is one of the issues that needs to be repeated, is the fact that this slipped through zoning enforcement, and
It didn't slip through zoning enforcement. He was notified in 2005. You guys got the letter
right,
that he shouldn't be there.
right, right.
You know, 2 weeks after he received the letter in 2008, he poured a $1,500 slab in front of his fuel station.
And what I can tell you is that we went on record in front of the Board of Selectmen to, Kim McCard and I appeared before the Board of Selectmen with a list of complaints of what zoning enforcement has not responded to, and this can be added to the negligence of the code enforcement officer.
But you know what, that's neither here nor there at this point. At this point, you know what? You know, what is a person to do? What is an abutter to do? What is somebody like me that buys my house for more than it was worth and look at the abutting property and say, only because I'm in the business and that's what I do, that I had the knowledge to look at an abutting property and say, this property is 180 feet wide. The town of Goffstown is not gonna allow, per their zoning laws now, anything to happen in that property. And I spent a fortune on my house to make that house what it is now. Because something can't be done like this next to me. It can't. This affects the value of my house. Someday when I wanna sell it, people don't wanna listen to reverse beepers all day long. They don't wanna listen to them all night long in the wintertime when all the snow's getting hauled into this place. They just don't. So it affects the value of my house. And I can't, you know, you can't seem to get relief from any of the board. You know, what is somebody doing? What more can you do than look at zoning and say, it can't happen? And then it does happen, and it keeps happening, and it keeps getting bigger, and it still hasn't stopped. And the town themselves buy material from him, out of the yard, after 2 cease and desist.
I understand.
You know, I know, okay, so
That's an interesting point.
everybody just hears it, and nothing ever happens. You know, I understand the meeting's over and everything's done and nothing else can change. I missed the meeting, shame on me. But just so everybody knows that this whole thing with the state's not over, you know? You know, Vanderpool's got a meeting with Linda Magoon, I guess, who runs it up there, I guess, I don't know. Or is Chris Bison's boss or something.
Well,
And
what-
Bill something or other else up there, you know who that is?
Bill Thomas.
You know, they're all meeting tomorrow to figure this thing out.
What we had
This is on
concluded that-
planning's agenda tomorrow.
it
They're
is.
requesting it to be continued. We don't know if it's going to be continued. So I'd recommend that you go to the planning board meeting tomorrow.
You know what, and I already got that call, that, you know, that they're not gonna continue it, but
I don't know that. That's his request is to do that. They have all the information that you've submitted, they've received. So I suggest you go to the planning board meeting tomorrow.
you know, I sit and I watch these shows on a regular basis, and I see you guys talk about all the cuts and fills on the road. And this one that was just up here tonight is one of them you talked about. You specifically said, look at the size of this cut and the fill. But yet, somebody can fill 16 feet to a property line?
It's not
It
that,
doesn't
it's
concern
not
you?
that
And
we
I
disagree with
and I
you.
should
It's
say
not
that
we
it's
disagree with
it's
you,
not
but-
a done deal. This is not what we comment on is what's within our jurisdiction to comment on. But I would tell you that
But there's
it's
no
not
comment
done
on
with the
that?
planning board.
But, you know, the Conservation Commission doesn't have a comment on that? So Conservation Commission doesn't have a comment on, you know, the retention of our historical stone walls that are buried for 175 feet on my property?
I can tell you that I
The road is
don't
right over them.
I don't know what the recourse is for the town to. I don't know if there's a fine that would be levied. I have no idea. I can tell you that
It's not even that, it's just that there seems to be no concern from the board. There seems to be nothing. You know, I'd love for one of you guys to come stay a month at my house. You know, live at my house for a month.
I live across the street from the pig farm. Yes, I understand your frustration with the issues in the town.
And I'll tell you something else. Initially, when he moved in there, we had those too. And I said, Brian, you're 180 feet wide. You can't have them.
All I can suggest is
big one
that
way.
you keep working with the channels of the Board of Selectmen, of the Planning Board, and continue to air your disagreement with them.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think that the abutters have been forced to spend thousands of dollars, and every test and every expert we have seems to be, I don't know, disqualified. You know, the water test, what's the validity of the water test? Well, Mr. Gibson took it himself. You know, do I need an expert? Do you know what I'm saying? Do I need, you know, we hired two soil scientists. You know, we paid Tom Carr, and we paid Rick, I brought in Tom Carr, and then somebody says, well, you better bring in another one. So I bring in Rick Vanderpool. We bring in two. And that ends up being not enough. We got two people that say that there's been wetlands filled up there, and that's still not enough.
And I would say that you just need to continue bringing your disagreement before the Planning Board.
All right, make a point.
Yes.
So, earlier we were presented, and the other applicants, the other representing the Fournier, they did make the statement repeatedly, dismissing the water sample by saying, well, that was the applicant. He wasn't here to state that, hold on a minute, it wasn't me, I hired a professional certified in the state, and it was that certified professional that did the water sample. That's a whole different aspect of it. And it seems to me like we could amend what we're saying to planning based on that fact, that we should point out that it was indeed a professional
Well,
who did the water sample, not just the applicant.
This
And-
came up at the last meeting, though, and Collis reminded everyone of that you don't just go have Joe Schmo do a water sample, that these are valid samples.
But
And the
that's all-
applicant may choose to not think that they're valid, but they are actually valid, and planning is aware of that, and I believe Collis reminded them of that point at the last meeting, didn't?
But that's kind of fell through the cracks this evening
Mm-hmm.
without Collis being here. I think, we could at least point that out.
Are we allowed to do that?
Yeah.
We're not talking about 240 or 270 or 190. 230 is toxic to aquatic life. It kills everything in the brook.
Okay,
At
okay.
2:30.
I guess I need to stop, Brian, and say, because we moved on this earlier,
I know.
we can't change
I know.
what went on the record.
All I'm trying to say, all I'm trying to do.
And
is-
I think that your points are valid, and I think that you need to keep bringing them up to the planning board. And I think that it's not without the bounds to, to write a letter and request a formal, a water testing paid for by the applicant. The town has done that. I brought it up in the past.
Okay, but I want to question,
I'm not
Can-
sure
can we-
procedurally, because the
can-
applicant's not here to argue against him.
but neither was
I mean,
the
I'm giving him
abutter.
the opportunity to speak because he came and because I feel like people need a chance to voice their opinion, but technically, he missed,
Meeting's over.
they're not here. I'm not sure legally we're allowed to back up.
You took a formal vote in front of the applicant.
I agree with you, David. I wish we could say something, but I don't wanna get
The
told.
water test for their meeting tomorrow. So they're receiving the water test too. They're receiving a lot of correspondence that has been mailed to them.
Do we have someone going to the meeting tomorrow?
Well, the attendance of Collis is actually in question at this point. I can try to attend the meeting.
Because I'm gonna try to do that Southern New Hampshire planning.
Right.
Collins
right.
isn't gonna be at the planning board meeting?
I am not
I am
aware of either way. I'm not
So
aware.
If we have someone from conservation at the meeting tomorrow, now you're in a situation where the applicant is there
And you can say
Right.
something.
and everyone's
Say
there. It
something.
seems like it should be
Oh.
fair and correct to bring up the point that, well, the sample, what's being portrayed as the applicant taking the sample, in fact, was done by a certified professional in the state, and just to emphasize that point.
I can attend tomorrow night's meeting to see how it
Every bit
goes.
as legitimate as,
So. But Patty's right, we made a motion, we're not allowed to back up our record on it at this point. So,
that we can comment in person.
but we can comment in person. So,
I have the copy of the test too. And I have from the last meeting, because I have a lot of correspondence.
right, and we'd asked
And
to
this is
more
what
time
was
to look over
submitted,
them.
so,
What,
You may
everybody-
wanna look-
Everybody didn't get a copy of that tab?
no, they did when
We
it was
did.
before last meeting.
Right.
But I mean,
To make sure she.
I'm not seeing as anything on the water test. I don't know who, I mean, if he took it, there's nothing on there stamping that he took it.
Well, it's in our
Interesting,
minutes,
yeah.
it's in our minutes, the discussion about, how this test was made, but I think
So it would
without
be
getting
wise
ourselves
to
into any
have
more
something
trouble
from him.
from the Fournier legal team, we need to move on. So, yes,
The bottom line to the whole thing is he's proved what his stewardship of the land is. He may be an excellent businessman, but what happens to the property around him and his property is of no concern whatsoever. And he proved that time after time after time, the septic's in the way, he moves up the hill, puts it in the water table. You know, that's been fixed now, but it was in the water table for 4
Okay.
years.
I know, Brian, I need to cut you off, I'm sorry.
Dean.
Why, I'm sorry, I keep calling you
So,
Brian,
yeah, I know, well, thanks for letting me speak my piece, and
thank you.
I feel better for having said it. Didn't do any good, but.
Where are, okay, we're still going through, thank you. We're still going through correspondence. We have, correspondence from, where are we? Letter sent from code enforcement officer to 42 Emerald Circle, map 6, lot 24-3. Removing trees adjacent to the river and constructing a retaining wall along the bank of the river. Okay, you're hereby directed to stop work until you secure necessary approvals, zoning, DES, etc. So that was June 14th. So Emerald Circle, is that down, that's on the river? It says your property is adjacent to the Piscataquag River.
Yeah, I think that comes
Map
off.
6, 24-3.
You might have him, on the letter, does it have anything showing it? Like, did he do a little map or anything? Or
No,
usually doesn't.
sometimes he does, So, all right, so hopefully we'll receive more information from that. It's Palmer, Stephen Palmer. So, okay, next one, moving on from Carl. The Conservation Commission requested that the memo, oh, that was to Carl. Susan requested that They examined the Worthley Hill Pond. Okay, we did not receive any comment from Carl on that.
Nope,
Okay,
no comment. I haven't got anything.
great. Okay, I have this all boards meeting recap, is this in here? Oh, yep, email from the administration. The notes about the all boards meeting. And there, did everybody read this email? There was an all boards meeting, a statement was made regarding the negative impact of residential development. Who attended the all boards meeting for us?
It was Collis.
Collis, okay. And Collis made that statement? Collis, okay. So, the Board of Selectmen disagrees with the statement and refers you to this memo written by the town assessor. You wanna say something on that?
Is this actually the Board of Selectmen's position, or is this just a email from the assessor?
It was a presentation that the assessor did for us. It was not as formal a study as was done in Hooksett on the impact of development on land. But the basic results that he came to was that it is not as clear-cut as appears that residential development is a loser. There are situations, there are conditions where it is not a drain or a net negative. So to and I guess our position is to blanket statement that all development is a negative impact to the town is really not entirely 100% accurate. And so that we're just balancing that statement with the report that can be viewed online on the town website with the assessors.
And so I guess the question I'm getting at is there an official position by the selectmen on this matter? Is this report accepted as bona fide, verified? How deeply has it been analyzed? Has it been looked at carefully? I guess what strikes me as odd about it is that, I mean, more than 24 New Hampshire communities have done cost of community service studies, and the results have been strikingly consistent. There have only been a couple of towns where the residential development did not have a negative impact. And both of those towns were lake region towns where you had vacation homes on the lakes, which are, are assessed at millions and are seasonal and don't, at the same time they're assessed very high, they don't have impacts on the schools and so on. Those are the only exceptions that have occurred in the state when the actual full study was done. So this sort of ad hoc.
But I guess the position of the board is that an actual full study has not been done in Goffstown. We do have some preliminary numbers from the assessor, as rough as it is, and we're not taking a position that, yes, development is good for the town, or no, development is bad for the town. And I think what we're trying to say is we need to take a balanced approach, but we can't paint with a broad brush that all development in the town is negative.
And the position that has always been presented whenever the argument has been made, I'm usually one who's been making it, and I have always stated, we have not done the study in Goffstown. It would be great if we had, but we have not. Therefore, what we do is we look at, on average, what have other towns found? That seems a reasonable thing to do if you look at comparable towns who have actually done the actual study.
I don't
And
this
this
that
is what they
caveat was
found.
given.
But this
at the
ad
all
hoc
boards meeting.
analysis, I haven't had time to parse through it myself, to be honest, but I certainly intend to do so. It just seems strikingly odd that Goffstown should be so different from the rest of the communities in the state. And any evidence suggested on how that could be so, or why that would be so?
Well, if you take a look at, I'm just skimming over it, you look at, I think it has to do with the inflationary value of a housing market. It says an average residential property before 2000 costs the town $400 to $500 for educational taxes. Doesn't include the rest, just says educational. This is just based on houses versus education costs. Doesn't include fire, doesn't include sewer and water, doesn't include police. Then it says from 2000 to 2008, there have been 519 new residents. Got the cost of this, so the portion paid has a decrease. So it says, in my conclusion, the new residences have not caused increased taxes. Further, it's my conclusion that while the average residence costs the rest of the town, and this is strictly based on education, Since 2000, new residential construction has had an average assessment that is greater than the amount needed to support it in municipal and educational costs. So it seems that there's a very brief discussion of cost of municipal service, Goffstown cost for schools, cost of average property. You know,
It
it
just
just,
doesn't seem reasonable that you can make up your own methodology and then use that to contrast what has been found in the official methodologies that are done in all the other towns. To say, well, I'm gonna go do this ad hoc thing, and I'm not doing it the way everybody else does, and I get different results. Well, yeah, that's not a big surprise. I don't think that necessarily is an appropriate way to proceed.
I'm just gonna go with simple logic. I think it would hold is if you have X number of residential or developed parcels and your municipal and school services are X dollar, holding to your theory, if it increases by 50%, you should see an increase in municipal costs and school costs by 50%. But where that does not occur, that shows that that simple formula of trying to apply that all developed lots increase by X percentage is not valid. If your net development increases X percent, but your municipal and school costs have stayed the same, how do you hold to the formula that all development will increase your costs?
because you have to look at the big picture. The houses from 2000 to 2008 are still a part of the town where all the other residences have been built, and you can't pull those residences out and look at them as a separate pool because all the taxes and all the income and all everything goes together. So it's sort of, well, I think we
But I think that
we can argue a
proves the
lot about it, but
point.
we need a cost of
No, wait a
community
minute. There's
services.
a lot of other subtle points too. You build a new house, your initial assessment is higher. Every year it
Right.
decreases a little bit as the house ages. So but guess what? As those houses decrease and their assessments drop, then they're still contributing to the cost of services that have to be provided by the town. It's like cherry picking off the top here to make your argument look good, but it doesn't mean that it's valid. It doesn't mean that
Well,
it's
and we're not the
valid.
only one making that argument. There was a presentation at St. Anselm's by Peter Frances, who's a economist, who also pointed out that development is not necessarily a negative for a community. And I guess the position of the board is not totally 100% one way or the other, but we're saying you need to balance the statements. You can't paint the brush that, or broad brush, that all development is bad for the community.
Okay, would it then also be fair to start making the statements, because the broad brush statement is always made that we need business development to help stabilize the tax base. Are we now going to say, well, that's nonsense? We can't make that broad statement anymore. How do we know? Maybe the businesses are a net negative. If you're going to throw out the analysis and
Well, I
and
don't think we're
replace
comparing
it.
apples.
If
The
you're going to
argument
re-
is
you're
that
going to replace
commercial
standardized
development.
analysis with an ad hoc, off-the-cuff thing, then you know what, that's gonna impact the other argument too, that, your economic development of businesses isn't necessarily stabilizing your tax base. It's the same sort of broad brush thing. They're
I don't think
coming
anyone's
from the
ever
same
said that.
kind
It's
of
not
analysis.
stabilizing, it is shifting. The larger commercial share you have, you shift the tax burden from the individual homeowner to the commercial properties, and that's always been our goal. We're in the high 80s to 90% of tax burden on the homeowners, where other communities are more balanced, 50-50, 60-40.
And those are-
And so that is our goal, is to shift some of that tax burden to commercial properties.
And the cost of community service studies show that going to having more commercial development helps, just like they show that having more conservation area helps. You can't, it's like, there's this attempt here to, well, let's just dismiss the conservation argument a little bit. We're gonna keep the other argument, but we're just gonna dismiss the
Well, maybe this is an
conservation.
opportunity to get all the parties together and try to
I didn't feel
do
like.
something like
it
that.
Didn't feel like we were getting all the parties together, because this was done, we didn't know it was being done, and it has been sent to every board member, on every committee, and kind of thrown out there like, there's the facts.
I think it was just done in response to the single comment that was made, without any of the caveats, without any of the, just that development is a negative.
This was
net
done
So
March
negative.
4th.
If
This-
further
Sorry?
The
studies were,
study was done March 4th.
if further studies
The
were to be
assessing
done
memo.
affording a rebuttal.
Right, that
that
study
also-
was done after, or just prior to the town meeting, I believe.
Ah, gotcha. Hence the 4th meeting, okay.
Right.
Well, I guess we can all agree that we would, a cost of community services would be valuable. So, oh, how about that? This just goes on and on and on. Page after page of numbers. That wasn't what I was looking for at all. Okay.
Well, we'll take a good look at it.
So there are the minutes from the report of the all boards meeting. No one from here came. Do you want to, Nick, do you want to comment on the all boards meeting?
Well, I think the overarching theme of the meeting was attempting to cultivate ideas and cooperation between the boards towards that recognition that there is no money. You know, we went around the table and looked at each of the departments, each of the committees, looked at CIP requests, looked at capital needs, and the dollars are staggering, I should say, when you start adding up. But then when you look at the economic condition currently, the numbers of foreclosures, it's just, they're gonna be hard decisions that are going to have to be made. I know one thing that the Board of Selectmen discussed is if there are any plans to purchase land, that those discussions occur sooner rather than at the nth hour, because there's very limited dollars, and the chances of the board supporting any major capital purchases are very slim.
I understand that and agree with it, and I certainly hope the board understands that when the Roberts Farm came up, that came up at the last minute.
That was understood.
That was not planned. But it's also a little puzzling, and, you know, the argument, of course, made last year was, well, because the Financial Times, it's not the right time. We should wait. But yet it was the right time to purchase the Barnard property. And it's, you know, one thing is said, but it seems like when it's the selectmen who want to pursue the project, then somehow the story's different. Could be making the same argument right now. It's not the right time to build another roundabout. Money is tight. Well, why are we gonna spend over $500,000 to build another roundabout? So I'm hearing the message, but it's not ringing quite true when we see these other things going on.
Actually, Back Mountain Road has been repaved for the third time in 4 years, is that right?
I
Well-
don't believe that's right, but
We suspended,
top of
we
my head.
suspended our road reclamation program because of,
Nick, all the
Expenses.
neighbors,
the roundabout is an expense contained in the road plan. It is not an additional expense on top of the road plan.
right, but I mean, I just sustained damage. to the
And
road.
I don't want to get into debate on the budgetary issues, it's
You
just,
understand where I'm coming from? There seems to be a big discrepancy between what the selectmen say and what they do on these issues.
well, I don't agree, but I understand where you're coming from.
but I do actually, I guess all the neighbors have been asking, why are they repaving Back Mountain Road for the third time? It was rebuilt just a few years ago, and they've now come back and this is the third coat that they've, so we don't understand that. There's an awful lot of, I mean, it's real slick to ride on now, boy, it's like sailing along, but it's just, it was rebuilt, what, 3, maybe 4 years ago, and then they come back and put another top coat on, and now they've come.
I will find out for
So we were
you.
all wondering, in some sense, I think we're all expecting budgets to be tight and people to tighten their belt across the whole country. That message
Right, and
is
I can
out.
assure you that we're not just going out and putting an extra coat of pavement on a road just for the heck of it. I'm sure there is some reason why
Well-
it's been done, so I will find out for you. I will talk to Carl and get you that answer.
But
Okay.
I guess, Nick, it was part of is what I'm trying to say.
But to go back to the all boards meeting, that was
Yes.
really the thrust of the meeting was to, just to remind everyone to be mindful of the economic conditions. The budget committee met I believe right after that, and basically gave guidance to school district and the town that they expect to see the budget come in at 10% below last year's. And that's including all warrant articles, everything.
Which there was some fancy business on that. Or which was it, the budget where it turned out that they had changed things in the meeting, that we were actually having a bigger budget than what would have been the default budget? I don't know, anyway, last meeting was a little, sorry, there was
Okay.
a lot of that stuff going on.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just gonna keep moving. We have a shoreline application, 144 Moose Club Road, shoreline permit. No variance is required, reviewed within 30 days. Who is that?
You commented on them. Remember they came in along Moose Club and
Oh.
they're building an addition.
Oh, okay.
It's a very small one, maybe
Yeah.
11,
Oh,
10
yeah.
or 11 feet. Was
So
it
now
11?
that they're going forward with everything.
All
Very
right.
small.
Jason, wonderful. Okay.
I do have another piece of correspondence that was stuck in your box that wasn't given to me. That it's the rail trail box culvert. It's just they did an amendment to it. Doesn't affect the area that they're going to impact. It's from Megan. I don't know if you want to see it.
You can hand
May
me out
already
so I
know,
can say
but
I
I
looked
just-
at it.
As I'm setting up, I'm like, oh, there's something in your box.
Okay.
Normally everyone
It
is.
is okay.
Thank you. Okay, I'm looking at the one from Pierre, the beautification plan. Have we received a beautification plan from Mr. Pierre?
No, we haven't yet. It's just
Okay.
letting you know that that possibly could be coming in.
Okay, and I actually ran into him at the coffee shop. There's a man, something Pierre, says that he'd like to work on cleaning up the trails and maybe new kiosks at Uncanunic Mountain. I said, sure, knock yourself out. And then I guess he told Sue, and Sue said, what am I gonna say? No, don't go out there and do that. So, but
what-
Sue told him that he might come in and bring some information. And I think he got referred to Collis because Collis at one point, when someone asked about the lake, so it's,
Yeah, I was just curious
might
what
have a mixed up in my head.
beautification meant.
I don't know, and I thought he was in association with some group or something, so we're hoping so officially, he got a letter from Sue saying, come to conservation and talk to him, because it's their
Well-
property.
I'll tell you, the
So-
old hog rail trail has been so grossly eroded away. It is a disaster. And we had in the past Boy Scout projects there that we did water bars and had just done a wonderful job. And, you just can't keep after I think it was probably motorized ATVs or something. Have you been,
I think he means just signage. That's what I was assuming he means.
That's what I was wondering. Because actually, it'd be nice to talk to them about more than just signage, if that's what
Well, they were told to come to us, and I had assumed frankly that he'd be here,
Yeah,
so,
well, it says cleanup trail, as I
Yes.
was wondering. But
Yeah.
okay.
Probably
that should
about
have
a
some
month ago,
supervision.
some group, don't know who it was, had gone up to the top of North Uncanunic and did a great job of cleaning up.
Oh, good.
They got rid of the fire rings, they picked up the trash, they just did a tremendous job.
Well, the Boy
Went
Scouts
up
and the
two
Girl
weeks,
Scouts
2
were
weeks later, another group of individuals go up and littered the entire top with broken glass and cans and,
So
including
frustrating.
hacking of trees and then just this last week, on the trail, I just noticed a couple days ago, as you approach the summit, someone has started cutting a rather large brush area, just cutting it off one side and piling on the other.
Why?
I don't know, and it makes no sense, and I don't see, I
For
just
you?
wanted to make sure it wasn't part of this.
Can you make a note to
Is it a few?
Derek to check into it?
I hate to tell you, years ago, when I was chairman, we had a camper. He was a homeless fellow that just had set up residence on conservation land, and I happened to be out hiking and ran across this, and then had to deal with it.
Hmm.
But I don't know. Is it
Maybe we should
something-
ask
Where's
Derek
somebody-
to
which
look
one
into.
is- where is
look
this?
into
I
it.
think probably
Is
this
it
is just
for
a
a view?
one-off thing, and so I'll just watch it, cause I go up there a lot. And if
Okay.
it's continuing, then contact, but, a lot of times you go up and there'll just be some mess that somebody made when they were camping or whatever.
We have had complaints with some on ATVs cutting trails as they're going through.
See,
It's just trying to
Ah,
catch them doing it.
giant metal posts. Okay, moving on, there's a note from Sue Please let conservation know at their next meeting I have submitted a CIP request for web-based land use software, which would provide us many capabilities. We want to seek out a program which meets conservation's needs as expressed in previous emails. I'm not sure what email she's referring to track their monitoring and stewardship of conservation land. I don't know if she's referring to my email about stewardship that didn't get answered. If this request is approved, I'll follow up with the conservation requesting regarding their specific needs. We don't have any specific needs at this time for web-based land use software. We're not sure what she's looking into or what the needs are that she's trying to fulfill, but the needs that we have are currently fulfilled either through publicly available information or the information that we had received in the past or
Or the
things.
GIS system that I bought with my own money several years ago.
Right, or the GIS system that we currently use, so. We're not really sure what she's looking at for this web-based land use software, but, I mean, we had gone back and forth with Scott Bartlett, Scott, right, about, you know, them asking us for money and talking about how it's based on the assessment rate, and, you know, we didn't express any interest in using conservation money for that, first because we're not legally allowed to, but secondly because we felt like our needs are currently met and we didn't see any need to share the cost of that, but we're not really sure what she's going for with this, but,
She hasn't discussed this with the board, so I'm not
Okay.
entirely sure, so it might be,
okay. Well, at any rate, our response would be our needs are currently met, so.
something you'll communicate to her?
You
or
wanna-
would you?
You wanna
Yeah,
send her a
I
memo?
wanna-
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Okay, did I do all those? Seems like I missed one. Oh, can we send the contact list around, did we?
It's right
I
here.
started.
Sorry, everybody send the contact list around, remind me to fix that. If you have any changes in your name, address, phone number, marital status, updated on Facebook or something. Facebook stalk, I have to tell you, I got Facebook stalked. Okay, plans, we have one plan, it feels like, oh, junkyard, sorry guys, I knew there was something else on that list. Okay, Derek did a wonderful job, you all have copies of looking back over what happened, pre and post for the cleanup. It, basically, to summarize, at this time, my plan is to, I'm sorry, I'm skipping things. This is Derek's report for an enforcement that we've been working on at 533 Tibbetts Hill Road. Okay. Several of us site walked this. It was a horrific dump site. A complaint was filed with DES. He's been working with DES. Derek sent us a very thorough report with pictures. Good job, Derek. It says that this time my plan is to continue working with the property owners to document his cleanup. I will be requesting additional documentation of scrap metal weights and sidewalks every 6 months. I will report the property owner's progress to the Board of Selectmen with any comments from the Concom to determine if additional action should be undertaken. One thing that we discussed, sort of off the cuff on the, oh yeah, it was huge. Whew, it was unreal.
Oh, my God.
One thing that we discussed kind of off the cuff at the last meeting was that once he removes all of the junk, the physical things that you see on the top, what has happened over the years, this is adjacent, if you look at the maps, this is abutting our prime wetlands. And he has basically been, well, I would imagine, I can't say for officially, but I would imagine that there's a significant amount of soil or water contamination that has flowed from his site to our lovely prime wetland. And I don't know, I don't think we've ever had a process of enforcement at this level, but I would imagine that the town would want to do some soil or water testing to discuss remediation plans. I happen to know this because my husband does this for a living, that once you clean off the junk, it's not just the junk. There's going to be subsurface determinations that will need to be made. And so I just want to make a point that I don't know what the town's process is regarding that. I would imagine we'd ask the applicant to pay for it since he's the one who did this. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. We're moving in the right direction, definitely, but, you know, there's got to be a plume that's running under this site with all that gravel that's running right into our wetland. That's not lovely. So, I don't know if Derek has given any thought to what to do that about that or how that would work within the town process, but maybe that needs to be a discussion that just needs
So
to
that's
be
not
introduced.
something that the state would, I mean, I guess you'd file, well, I'm wondering, could you file a complaint and then, but
It could be a state process that we might want to look into having DES jurisdiction enforce that, which I would imagine the town could probably do that, could probably ask DES to, you know, to say this guy was dumping illegally. I don't really know what the process
Isn't
is.
DES involved in monitoring the cleanup of this as well?
I'm not sure, a complaint was filed, and I know that they were working with him. I don't know how DES is following up on it. But I would assume that it is in their radar screen right now, and they're probably keeping an eye on it too, so. So hopefully maybe we'll see something more, so. Okay, then there's David, okay, then there's one more thing. Patty turns into a pumpkin at 9 o'clock, so I gotta finish. All right.
Blames me.
Okay, map 5, lot 61-1 and 95-1, excavation site plan, Brookfield Investment Group, Normand Road, Wallace Road, and Master Road. What is this?
That would be the Monty property behind the school.
Well,
Is it?
it looks like it.
Ah,
So do we have explanation about this? Or Patty, can you tell
any
us?
idea what's going on?
This is the one that at one time was on the warrant to, the town to purchase for recreational fields, and it was defeated.
Right, this is the old villa right?
Yeah, it's-
Yeah, the
yeah, and
villa, the.
Right, here's the villa. If you look on the second page of your map, here's the villa, then this is all back here. Okay.
He's looking at excavating the property.
Topo, benchmark, location, wetlands,
Coming off
shower.
of Norman Road.
Doesn't mean-
Oh, coming off of Norman.
Yeah,
But you know, our big question at the time was,
Yeah, that's.
access into that part of that land was all wet.
It
There
is
was
wet.
no, remember we walked it and there was no way to get into the dry part.
This is existing, so
Without
look
going
look
to
at
the
the
wetland.
site,
I never
proposed
read
site.
mine.
Yeah, no, I'm not
The
sure.
excavation area.
Who's developing it? Yes, but is he giving it to the town, or is he developing it as a separate park that he's gonna charge people to go use? I don't know.
I don't know. But I'm just, you know, as an excavation project, I'm questioning how he's going to get in and out of there.
This,
Through the wet, 15-foot
wet.
access roadway to be laid on top of existing gravel roadway.
if you go to the second page, it shows him coming in the area.
So he's
The wetland.
suggesting that there'll be no wetland impacts because he's laying the road on top of
Oh,
an
you know,
existing
This
road.
is the parking lot here, and the playing field.
This is not a, this is not a town project, this is the owner coming in to get, he wants his excavation permit to excavate the area, 623,048 square feet.
Oh, what's our jurisdiction?
He's coming in to planning,
For gravel.
planning.
I mean,
For
basically,
an
this
excavation
wasn't, it
permit,
wasn't old.
not subdivision.
But that was an
Which
old,
ties our hands a lot.
that's an old gravel pit. I
I'm
mean,
sorry,
they
Nick,
took
Nick
it down.
Just a
keeps-
question for Patty, just as far as this in the planning board, is the planning board, do they have plans to have it go to zoning? Because graveling
it has
requires,
been recommended because in
Needs a
one area,
variance.
he needs a conditional use in one area in the zoning ordinance.
Special
In another
exception.
area, it says he needs a special exception, and then he needs a variance because.
in the
because
the
it-
residential.
Yeah, because
Oh, yeah,
it
right,
over,
it's
it goes
split,
into
that's
two
right.
zones.
So will that be done first?
He's on the agenda for tomorrow. It's, his,
Moved.
his
He's
first,
taking out.
actually, he got accepted, it'd be his first hearing, but,
Thought the
we
planning-
submitted a fee for him to go to planning, we're waiting, Derek has, unless they came in, and I wasn't here when they came in, but they need to go to ZBA, whether they'll talk a little bit about it and continue, I don't know, or whether they'll just continue it until he gets his special exception.
So he's saying theoretically he can get in and out and do all this without wetland.
Oh, he's impacted, he's got wetland right in the,
Right, we walked in, when we went to do the site walk, we couldn't walk on the road because it was underwater.
Right.
Remember that? We had to walk around.
When did
I mean,
Shower delineate these?
and actually, look,
it
he's
old?
even got a wetland showing right.
No,
But
Shower.
he's
Wetlands
talking
show
about taking
delineated.
material 6 to 8 feet below the surface.
Okay, well, first of all, his wetlands were delineated in 2002, so that's the first note, is that we're gonna say these wetlands are too old even for the state to consider.
Right.
Shower, I'll have to go out there and redelineate the whole site. Oof, don't wanna do that. That's big.
Do you want him to come
So,
in?
because you see note number 9 says wetlands were delineated by Shower Environmental Consultants January 2002 and located in the field by TF Moran. So I would say, first off, we want to see a current and up-to-date
Updated wetlands delineation.
wetland plan.
I thought you would want him to come in. I did ask.
Oh, yeah.
I asked the engineer, when their plans were submitted, if they wanted to come to conservation, and they said, well, we're gonna go to planning first, so if you want him to come and you,
Oh, yeah.
I'd say you'd like him to come before.
Yeah,
If you
but
want a
I would
site
suggest if
walk.
he wants to delineate the wetlands first, because that's
Okay.
gonna take a while. I mean, he'll probably just check the old lines, but definitely there are places where those have shifted since 2002. So,
And that should be done first.
yes, and then if he wants to revise his plan accordingly, and we can talk to him at the next meeting.
No, I think this was an old gravel pit that they had gone below the level, you know,
Is going
the
up or
water
down?
level at the first place. I mean, there's really just so much water in there that it's,
Are you, ladies, I didn't walk at the, are you going down?
yes, you are going very, but what's interesting is when we came up against this wall, because originally they were planning to put, they were
Apartments.
apartments in there,
Apartments.
yeah,
Right.
several, and that when we looked at this, they were erecting walls behind these people's
Oh, yeah, I remember.
and then we saw that water would have literally, had they opened up this wall, they would have had gushers of water coming through. I mean, this is a huge wet area.
Well, the center's dry, this is dry, this was dry.
Right, that middle
It's
upland
like
piece
gravel,
is dry.
but everything around it was wet.
Right, right. And our limits of jurisdiction really are to make sure he can get in and out without affecting the wetlands. I'm not sure we can we can enforce a buffer because it's
Yeah.
not a subdivision.
Subdivision.
Right.
But you do
Which
notice.
is a question, Patty, maybe we need to find out.
In this old delineation that right below the word throughout, there's a wetland. You see it says OW there, there's a so within his clearing, yeah,
Oh, yeah,
It's right in
right there, yeah.
right. So,
Okay,
I think he's got,
so he's got wetland impacts.
yes,
Okay. Yeah,
but I don't even think this
sure,
is
tell him we'd
properly
love to
known.
chat with him.
So you recommend you request that he comes before the conservation?
Yes, but the first step I would recommend is that we believe that the wetlands need to be redelineated or re-examined, which he'll have to do for DES anyway.
Well, I think it's a ridge. I think they came in here and
Okay.
they.
And you will want a site walk this
They-
eventually.
Oh,
right?
yeah, we'll want a sidewalk,
Well,
yeah.
all this stuff here, and this is a.
I think
really
I'm,
good
oh,
guy.
maybe you, we're probably the only two on
This
the
is
whole
water.
commission that hasn't walked it 3 or 4 times. So,
I'm curious.
yeah. Okey dokey. All right. Anybody else have anything? I have something very briefly, I just wanted to keep everybody, informed. I'm not doing anything about it, but, I keep, I sent Megan an email about, the Japanese knotweed at across the street from the Pizza Hut. Only because it just really, really annoys me. And, well, the thing is, if you've noticed that poor house that burned down and then they rebuilt it on Mass Road as you come into town, that's knotweed right there, and they cut it down, and you just quadruple it. So the town, or Nick, we don't have an invasive species eradication plan for the town. And I believe that they do it project by project. For example, Megan and I discussed this when they did Harrybrook Bridge. They pulled it out, they were able to scrape the knotweed out there and cover it, and it was part of their plan to DES and part of their project cost. So I sent Megan a note saying, hey, do you guys have any intention upon cutting this down? It's impeding our scenic view of one of the best places in Pinardville to see the river. She said, no one's really discussed it. I said, and we were just doing just quick and dirty emails saying, hey, can you get me some costs? And she posted it on a DPW blog, and we got a couple answers back about, and then she was very nice. Megan did an excellent job. I know she's really busy this time of year. She talked to her husband, who is also some kind of engineer thing, and gave me some, just ballpark estimates of between $1,500 to $2,500 per acre to treat knotweed, because knotweed, if you just cut it, it will come back and it will invade that bank. And the thing is, I mean, if I were to just say, hey, can DPW go out there and cut that, because you can't see the river at all. I don't know if when you sit at that light, you're like, you can't see the river because of the knotweed. So if they cut it, they'd have to cut it, spray it, but the best way is to just grab it with a backhoe and dig it out. And I jumped out with my kids, and I would say it's, 200 feet by 100 feet. I mean, it's less than a quarter of an acre in size. But, as all projects become a project in town, it would have to be, a couple of men, a couple of hours, and they'd have to file a treatment plan with the state. So it's not something that's in anybody's budgets at this time. It's something that I think the town should think about dealing with in the future. I don't anticipate it being dealt with right away.
Yes, my only other question too is that slope that's behind the Pizza Hut, is that what you're
Yes.
talking about?
No, across the street.
Okay.
So on the same side as Tire Warehouse, you can see that,
I see
that
ice
river,
pond.
right, that river guardrail right there.
Okay.
You can't see, you almost can't see the ice pond
Right.
because that's knotweed.
Okay.
That's not weed.
But
And
you
if
know what's
somebody were to go out there and cut it down just because it impedes our view, it's gonna come back worse.
Do you drive 101 at all to the coast? That is all.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
All knotweed along with. There's
Yes.
one big section where they came in and they did sprayed, you can see that they
Yes.
used Roundup, all the time. I mean, this stuff is just.
And it's one of the few places in town where I would suggest
Before-
to the town to consider actually treating it and trying to eradicate it, because it's in one of the most scenic views of our town, and it's right
in the
there.
sidewalk too.
Yeah,
Because
it's
I'm
right
running,
there.
I'm like, I'm
Here's
running
kind
by.
of maybe
and
a
it's-
crazy question.
Yeah, it is in the sidewalk.
Is there any way that people could deal with it when it's starting manually, like small groups? I'm trying to think of ways that we could.
You can cut it and paint it and cut
Thing
it and paint it and cut it and paint it.
Without costing the taxpayer, because we all know that the budget's tight and all that.
It's very labor
There
intensive.
are many, many places where it's just getting started. It
Yeah,
hasn't reached
just
that
started.
size, but it's popping up everywhere. A good example is the Mountain Road after it was redone.
Right.
It's small patches coming up everywhere through there.
If you,
Everywhere.
if you cut it,
Airborne, it's all done by, is it all?
I'm not
Well,
sure actually if
what
it's
I'm
rhizome,
wondering
but I
is-
know it
Carry.
comes. You have to paint it. If you cut it, you have to paint it. The best is to backhoe it out. But I mean, it's so bad, they have to like take it to DPW and either burn it or cover it to burn the seed layer with black plastic, and it has to be handled or else it'll spread even worse.
I guess what I'm wondering is,
So-
how is it if we're doing this and if it's birds that are carrying seeds constantly, then is it just, I guess that's what I'm wondering, or is it something that is just by root?
It could be eradicated in that spot. It could either be cut and painted, and it takes a long time to cut and, root paint it,
Oh, I understand.
and then it won't come back up. Or you can, dig it out, but then you have to, it's part of the cost, unfortunately, is the dig out and the disposal of, because you gotta treat this completely diseased soil and stuff, so that's part of the cost. But I mean, I would say off the cuff, it might cost that spot less than $1,000, but we all know we don't have an extra $1,000 in DPW or engineering budget. So it's just something that we need to consider as a town, moving forward. Because if we leave it to grow this season, and we probably will, next season, I mean, it might get to the point where we can't see the river at all. It's gonna take over that bank, so.
Let me restate this in a simpler way. On my property, where it started to come up along the edge of the road, I pulled it, or I hit it with a little bit of Roundup or something, but mostly I pulled it and got rid of it. So it's just if you can get it in the very beginning, and there are so many places around town where that could be done before it turns into what you're
Right.
describing. But the
Yes.
thing is, I think there would have to be permission of some kind given if, like, some group was formed, the knotweed, eradication group. Would it be possible to get permission from the town to go along and
Not read.
taking it out of the right of way? Because primarily that's where it is. It's the roadsides and the right of way access. It seems to be distributed in some part by maintenance equipment and.
And yeah, that's the problem. It's spread by maintenance equipment. And some towns deal with it in a lot of different ways, but it's a good question to think about. Could they do it as it comes up? Yes, but to deal with the existing stands.
No, I understand,
I don't
but,
know.
so it's a different question,
Yeah.
but possibly we could do something to help a little bit from getting worse in other places but we would have to have some sort of permission to do so. We can't just go around and.
So you'd like to know what the requirements, what would be needed if we had volunteer groups that would want to remove?
Be the requirements from
the
the
town side.
selectmen to go out and
Right.
kill knotweed.
And residential education. I bet people don't realize that what it is, that it's invasive, and to pull it out. Everyone knows purple loose drive.
right.
You've heard that coming out of your ears, everyone's familiar with that. People may not realize or be aware that that is something that if you see and you're on a major street, that you should pull it up. So
Yeah.
residential education may be another
I
factor
know those poor
too.
people who built that nice, beautiful house, you know what I'm talking about, in the curve in the road? And they
Yes.
cut it all down, and it's huge now.
That's what I'm saying, may not realize that if I cut it down, that's not gonna work, what else can I do?
Yeah.
So he says, is it time to have, adjourn our meeting?
Oh, yes, definitely, yes.
Comment, is GTV available for public education?
Oh, that's
Thank
what you're
you.
saying, Ma, here I am ready to adjourn
Like he's throwing us out.
That's
Okay,
a very
well,
good
anyway, we are
idea.
done, because that was my last, unless someone else, I'm sorry, Susan.
No, I'm thinking, I mean, this is something that has come up and we talked about today, and then it's just gonna be put in our back pocket. Maybe we should put this on the agenda early on, and maybe we should be the force behind, the education and doing something about invasive species, either
Well, it
going to
doesn't-
selectmen,
it is
find out what can be done,
Oh.
you know, put it on GTV,
Right.
being the
Proactive.
proactive people that
Right.
do this. Because I know
Are you
sometimes
saying
things
we
come
should
up.
do something other than just talk about it?
We have so much stuff to do, but I'm just thinking it's gonna get put in the back pocket and it's not gonna
Yeah.
get brought up again, probably. But maybe we should just take this in hand and put it
Right.
on the agenda for next time and talk about it early on, and maybe we'll have an answer.
I swear.
Because, I
learned
mean, I've got
that.
Roundup,
We
I
had
can go
one
down there and
invasive
spray
one
it,
the
but
first
I don't,
one.
they wouldn't let me
Right.
spray town
Right.
hall, they wouldn't let me take my Roundup and spray at town hall.
Well, and it's, I mean, it is a good question, is if, can we get, because Megan seemed to think that it does require, a defoliant that, as a licensed product, will knock it out much stronger than just you Roundup from the hardware store. And so, you know, to get a DPW guy to go out there, cut it down, spray it, get his license, I mean, you're still talking a $500 if we don't wanna backhoe it out for something. So it's, you know, those are issues about what could we do, you know, and not just at that site, but at other sites as they pop up, so,
Right.
yeah. Oh,
Okay.
all right, I would agree with that. Let's put, and I'll have some more information. Megan gave me some other sites to look into, so I'll get a few more sites, more information about that as far as what could we do.
Oh, it's out of control.
And pursue possible grant
Yeah.
sources.
That's an excellent idea, yes.
Right, Milfoil got money, right?
Right, right. Oh. Okay, anyone else? Okay,
This is great.
someone motion?
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, Susan, second?
Second?
Second, David, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, good meeting, right?
Susan,
on
I have
time.
your boxes in my car for your husband, and I gave Jean a check.